The night was quiet. The forest near Jack's scrapyard was silent. Only the sound of wind moving through the old broken metal. Jack sat on his porch, drinking hot coffee, watching the stars. He lived alone ever since his wife passed. His days were spent fixing old machines and collecting junk. But this night was different. A strange humming filled the air, like something was cutting through the sky, low and sharp. Jack looked up, just in time to see a streak of fire rush over his yard and crash deep into the woods behind. The ground shook slightly. Birds flew away screaming. And then, silence again. Jack stood up fast, heart pounding. He grabbed his flashlight and a small tool pistol, just in case. He followed the smoke and broken branches, deeper into the dark trees. After 20 minutes, he found it. A small alien pod, half buried in mud and burning leaves. Its sides were scorched and cracked, hissing with steam. Jack moved closer, slowly, carefully. The pod opened with a hiss, and inside was a girl. She was small, maybe 8 or 9 in human years, but clearly not human. Her skin was soft purple, her hair like silver threads glowing faintly, her eyes large and shining like twin moons. She was scared, shaking, her clothes torn. Blood on her knees and arms. Jack froze, not because she looked dangerous, but because she looked broken. The girl tried to speak, but only soft alien words came out. She fell forward, unconscious. Jack caught her, his hands trembling. He looked around. No one else had followed the crash. No drones, no sirens, nothing. He lifted her gently, her body light like feathers. "I'll figure this out later," he whispered, and carried her back to the junkyard, inside his workshop. Jack placed her on the softest blanket he had. He cleaned her wounds, gave her water, and covered her with a thermal sheet. The girl didn't wake, but her breathing was steady. Jack sat beside her all night, watching her sleep, wondering who she was, where she came from, and why no one came to find her. By morning, the girl woke up slowly, eyes blinking at the light. She looked at Jack with fear, then confusion, then relief. He smiled gently, held up a piece of bread and said, "Eat." She took it, chewing slowly, carefully, watching him the whole time. Jack didn't ask questions. Not yet. Instead, he spoke softly, showing her things, using simple words. He pointed to himself. "Jack," then pointed to her. She didn't answer at first, but after a moment, she whispered something like lure. He smiled. "Lyra, that's a pretty name." Over the next few days, she stayed quiet, always close to Jack, following him like a shadow. She didn't speak much, but she learned fast. She copied his words, his hand movements, and smiled when he gave her food or fixed her blanket. Jack found old clothes from his niece, small jackets, boots, and soft shirts. They fit her well. He built a small bed beside the workshop heater, and Lyra curled into it every night, like a kitten finding a home. But strange things began to happen. One morning, Jack found an old drone in the corner. Its circuits fried for years. Now it was hovering slightly, lights blinking slowly, as if waking up. Jack was confused. He hadn't touched it in months. Later, he caught Lyra sitting near it, hands on its metal chest, eyes glowing faintly. The drone beeped twice, then shut down. Jack stared at her, and she looked back, innocent but mysterious. Machines in the yard started reacting to her. Weak sparks, humming sounds, old lights flickering. It was like she had a connection to energy, like she could speak to metal without words. One night, as Jack was sleeping, a sharp beeping woke him. He looked outside. A black military drone hovered above the junkyard, scanning silently. Lyra stood behind him, clutching his arm, eyes wide with fear. Jack whispered, "Don't move," and turned off all the lights. The drone scanned for a few seconds more, then disappeared into the sky. Jack realized then, she was being hunted, and he had just made himself part of her story. He looked at her, shivering beside him, and pulled her close. "You're safe here," he said softly. "I promise." But even as he said it, he knew things were only going to get more dangerous, and somewhere out there, someone or something was looking for Lyra. Jack never wanted children, not after what he lost, but now, every time he looked at the strange little girl sleeping beside the heater, something in his heart began to change. She wasn't just a creature from the stars, not just some alien accident. She was a child, lost, afraid, and clinging to him like he was her only anchor. Each morning, Lyra followed him around the junkyard, stepping over broken engines and rusted parts. Her glowing eyes filled with curiosity. She didn't speak much, but her silence was never empty. She pointed at things, mimicked Jack's words, laughed softly when he dropped a wrench. He started calling her kid, and she started calling him Dad. At first, it was a joke, a sound she copied, but when she said it the third time, soft, honest, with a small smile, Jack froze. That word broke something inside him, not in a painful way, but like the cracking of ice before spring. He knelt beside her, looked into her glowing eyes, and said, "Okay then, kid, I'll be your dad." From that moment, he was. Jack taught her how to use tools, how to stack crates, how to turn bolts, and clean filters. She wasn't just smart, she was faster than any human child he had ever seen. One day, she fixed a broken power converter Jack had been trying to repair for 2 months. He stared at it, then at her, and said, "There's some kind of miracle, huh?" At night, she curled up in her blanket bed, and Jack would read old storybooks. To her, books with pictures, spaceships, and fairy queens. She loved the ones about lost princesses. Her fingers tracing the pages slowly. Jack didn't know if she remembered her past. But sometimes she whispered things in her sleep, alien words, royal-sounding phrases. He started recording those words. Not knowing why, one evening, Jack called an old friend, Milo, a former hacker who now lived off-grid. He sent Milo the recordings and asked if he could run a translation. Milo laughed. "You've got an alien living with you, Jack." Jack didn't answer, just waited. Hours passed. Then Milo called back, his voice no longer joking. "That language. It's old Solarian," Milo said. "You know what that means, right?" Jack didn't. "She's royalty, Jack. That girl's not just lost, she's a princess." Jack stared at Lyra, who was now playing with a broken robot arm, making its fingers move with gentle taps. A princess? Here, in his junkyard? He didn't know whether to laugh or panic. But the moment she looked up at him and smiled, he knew the truth. It didn't matter who she was. To him, she was just Lyra, his kid. Later that night, he heard a buzzing outside. A drone, not like before, sleeker, quieter, circling the junkyard from a distance. Jack shut the lights, pulled Lyra close, and whispered, "We might have trouble soon." She nodded, eyes glowing brighter than ever. Then, as if sensing something, she placed her hand on the wall. A faint hum passed through the metal, and the lights in the workshop dimmed. She had powered down the entire grid with just a touch. Jack didn't know how, or even what she truly was, but one thing was clear: she trusted him, and now he had to protect her. But deep in the shadows of the junkyard, something was already watching them. Not a drone, not a machine, but a presence, silent and unseen, waiting for the right moment to strike. And when it did, Jack would have to decide: protect the world from Lyra, or protect Lyra from the world. Because whatever she was, whatever blood ran in her veins, Jack was now her father. Not by law, not by blood, but by choice. And that made all the difference. The sun was just starting to rise when Jack felt something strange. His tools, which always lay scattered across the workbench, were perfectly lined up. The yard's motion lights had been triggered 3 times in the night, but no alerts came. The wind was still. Too still. Something was wrong. He stepped outside quietly, holding a wrench like a weapon. His heart pounded, not with fear for himself, but for Lyra. Inside the house, Lyra was still asleep, curled in her blanket like a cat. Jack didn't wake her. Not yet. Instead, he walked around the yard, scanning every corner, every shadow. Nothing. Just old metal, rusted gears, and silence, until he saw The footprints, not animal tracks, not his own, boot prints, clean, deep, and fresh, leading from the road to the fence. Then stopping, Jack's blood ran cold. Whoever came was watching. Later that day, a black SUV arrived, smooth and silent. Two men in dark uniforms stepped out. No logos, no flags, just tight smiles and sharp eyes. "Mr. Jack Holden," one said. "We're from the Intergalactic Defense Unit." Jack nodded slowly. "What do you want?" "We picked up a crash signal near this area last week," the man said. "Unusual radiation, high-frequency pulses." Jack kept his face calm. "I didn't see anything." The second man stared at him, eyes unblinking. "Mind if we look around?" Jack laughed dryly. "You think I'm hiding a space alien in my junkyard?" They didn't laugh. Jack shrugged. "Go ahead, you won't find anything," as they searched. Jack slipped back into the workshop. Lyra was already hiding under the workbench, camouflaged like glass. He couldn't even see her until she moved slightly. Her eyes met his, wide with fear. Jack knelt beside her, whispered, "It's okay, they'll leave soon." She nodded, barely breathing. The men searched for over an hour, scanning with strange devices, tapping on walls, shining lights into corners. But they found nothing. Jack was careful, calm, hiding every sign, every signal. Finally, the men returned to their car. "Thanks for your time," the first one said. The second one added, "If you hear or see anything strange, contact us immediately." They left, but Jack knew they didn't believe him and they would come back. That night, Lyra sat beside him in silence, her knees pulled to her chest. Then she whispered a single word, one he hadn't heard before. "Varnix." Jack looked at her. "What does that mean?" She closed her eyes, and slowly the memories came back. Her ship hadn't just crashed, it was shot down. The ones who did it weren't humans. They were Varnix, a rival alien race who destroyed her family's ship, hunted her people, and wanted her dead. "They wore human skin," she said, her voice shaky. Jack stared at her, stunned. "You mean they're not from Earth?" She nodded slowly. "They kill, they take." I ran, and now they had found her again. Jack stood up, locking the door, his mind racing. This wasn't just about hiding a lost alien girl anymore. This was about war, about secrets, about something bigger than anything he had imagined. She wasn't just lost, she was hunted, and they would stop at nothing to capture her. That night, Jack activated every old sensor, every camera, every defense system he had ever built, even the ones he swore he'd never use again. He turned his junkyard into a fortress, for Lyra, for the child who called him Dad, for the girl who had changed everything. But far beyond the trees, in a cloaked ship hovering above the hills, the Varnix leader watched a screen. On it, Lyra's image glowed softly, marked with red symbols. "She's still alive," he whispered. "The last Solarian must be claimed." Beside him, a soldier spoke. "Should we move now?" The leader shook his head. "No, let them feel safe. Then strike." Back in the junkyard, Lyra held Jack's hand and whispered, "Danger is coming." Jack looked into her eyes and said, "Let them come. They'll regret it." Asterisk, the sky was red that evening, filled with thick clouds and the smell of rain. Jack stood at the edge of the junkyard, watching the horizon. He didn't trust silence anymore. Silence meant someone was watching, waiting, hiding in the dark. Inside the workshop, Lyra sat quietly, holding an old metal sphere in her hands. The ball had been broken for years, just junk, but under her touch, it glowed softly. She wasn't even trying. Power flowed through her fingers like light. Through glass, Jack knew he had to understand what she really was. So he did something he never thought he would. He took a drop of her blood. Only one, using a clean tool. He sent it to Milo, his old hacker friend, the only person he trusted. With secrets this big, 2 nights later, Milo called, his voice low, serious. "What you sent me, it's not normal." Jack leaned in, whispering, "What did you find?" "Her blood. It's coded like it carries living data, ancient tech mixed with biology, Milo said. More than that, Jack. Her DNA holds control. Keys for something massive, maybe a weapon, maybe a system, I don't know. Jack's throat went dry. Why her? Because she's not just from some alien family. She's from the royal Silurian bloodline, Milo answered. She's a key, Jack, the last one. Jack turned to look at Lyra, who now slept peacefully under a blanket, so small, so innocent, and yet so powerful. Her blood wasn't just alien, it was priceless, and that's why they were hunting her. Not to rescue her, not to capture her, but to use her. Jack's thoughts were interrupted by a soft noise. He looked up, and Lyra was gone. Her blanket was still warm, but she wasn't there. Panic struck him like a lightning bolt. He ran outside, calling her name again and again. Lyra, where are you? No answer, just wind and rusted metal creaking in the breeze. Then he saw her at the edge of the woods, standing by the wrecked pod where he first found her. She was holding a flower in her hand, one that only bloomed under alien energy. He ran to her, breath heavy. Why'd you come here alone? He asked, voice sharp. She didn't look at him, her voice soft. I'm danger, Dad. Bad people want me. Jack knelt beside her. You're not danger, you're family. She looked up, tears glowing on her cheeks. If I go, you safe, she said. If I stay. They come, Jack held her close. Then let them come. Because I'm not letting you go. She wrapped her arms around his neck, whispering, You fix machines. But you fix me too. Back in the workshop, Jack started making plans, not for escape, but for war. He used Lyra's bioenergy to power up an old signal blocker, hiding her from trackers. He reforged an old security bot, turning it into a guardian. With a voice command, Protect Lyra. She watched him work with wide eyes and asked, Why you help me? Jack smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. Because someone helped me once, and now it's my turn. That night, Jack looked at the stars, thinking about everything, aliens, royal blood, weapons, danger. But most of all, he thought about the little girl who called him Dad, the one whose blood could change galaxies. And yet, all she wanted was to be safe, to be loved, to be home. He promised himself, no matter who came, no matter what they wanted, he would protect her. Because Lyra was no longer just a lost alien princess. She was his daughter, and no one was going to take her away, but deep underground, under the hills far from Jack's junkyard, a hidden Varnix lab blinked awake. The scan of Lyra's DNA had been received. Red lights flashed, weapons powered up, and a message was sent across. The stars, target confirmed. Prepare extraction. It started with a hum, soft and cold, like metal breathing. Then, the ground shook, just slightly, but enough for Jack to drop his wrench. Outside, the dogs howled, birds flew from trees, and power lines crackled. Something was coming, and it wasn't human. Jack grabbed his backpack, stuffed it with tools, batteries, and food packs. He ran to the workshop. But Lyra was already there, standing beside the window, her eyes glowing bright, her body still, as if she felt the danger before it even arrived. Time to go, Jack whispered, and she nodded, no questions, no fear. They moved fast through the yard, behind the rusted vehicles, past the broken fence. Beneath the oldest part of the junkyard was a secret, an old cargo ship. Jack had been fixing it for years, piece by piece, scrap by scrap. He never thought he'd use it, not really. But now, it was the only way out. Lyra placed her hand on the outer door, and the ship came alive. Lights flickered, engines hummed, systems booted up one by one. Jack stared at her, amazed again. You just talk to machines, don't you? She smiled gently. They listened to me. Jack started the launch sequence. But then the sky flashed. Blue lightning cut through the clouds. A dark Varnix ship dropped from orbit, silent and deadly. It hovered above the junkyard, scanning, searching. Then it fired. The explosion ripped through the ground, sending fire and smoke into the air. Jack hit the throttle, and the ship lifted off just in time. Below them, the junkyard, their home, was burning. Turning into ash, Lyra pressed her face to the window, silent tears falling down her cheeks. "Home gone," she whispered. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. "Home is wherever we go now, together." The Varnic ship chased them through the upper atmosphere, firing red bolts of plasma, cutting through clouds, shaking Jack's old cargo ship. "Come on, girl," Jack muttered to the ship. Gripping the controls, "Hold together." Lyra closed her eyes, placing her hands on the control panel. Suddenly, the engines roared louder, faster, cleaner, like something had awakened. The ship shot forward, leaving Earth behind. But Jack knew they couldn't run forever. They needed a place to hide, a place the Varnics couldn't reach. Then he remembered the old stories, told by smugglers and miners. A hidden Solarian outpost on Mars, buried under red sand, lost for decades. If the stories were true, it was a temple of power, a last safe haven for the royal bloodline. He looked at Lyra, who sat quietly beside him, eyes closed, whispering something in her own language. He didn't know what she was saying, but somehow she was guiding the ship. Hours passed as they crossed space, dodging asteroids, passing satellite debris. Lyra grew weaker, her skin pale, her glow fading. She was burning energy too fast, using her powers to keep the ship alive. Jack panicked. "Stop, Lyra. You'll hurt yourself." But she just smiled. Faintly, almost there. Then, through the red mist of Mars, the ship descended. The planet below looked dead. Dust, rock, silence. But something in the dust began to move, like it recognized her presence. A signal beacon flashed beneath the surface, and a landing bay opened slowly. The ship slipped inside, disappearing into the ancient Solarian ruins. Inside, the lights turned on one by one. Blue and gold, smooth and elegant, they had arrived. Jack lifted Lyra from her seat. She was barely conscious now. The room around them seemed to scan her, beams of light passing over her body. Then, a robotic voice echoed through the chamber. "Royal signature detected." "Welcome, Princess Lyra." A platform rose from the ground, holding a glass capsule filled with healing fluid. Jack gently placed her inside, and the chamber closed with a soft hiss. Blue light surrounded her, and the fluid began to glow. Machines hummed, scanning her body, repairing her cells, restoring her energy. Jack stepped back, watching the girl who had changed his life, floating peacefully like a sleeping star. He turned and looked around. Symbols on the walls told stories of kings, queens, wars, hope. He now stood in the heart of a lost empire, and Lyra was its last heir. Far above Mars, the Varnic ship circled the planet. The commander slammed his fist into the console. "They found the Solarian temple," he growled. "Prepare the ground forces." He stared at Lyra's image on the screen and whispered, "Her blood belongs to us." Asterisk. The Solarian chamber was silent, ancient, glowing with soft blue light. Machines whispered like wind in a cave. As if the walls were remembering, Jack stood beside the healing pod, watching Lyra float in the glowing fluid. Her body was calm now, her eyes closed, her chest rising slowly. She looked peaceful, but Jack knew something inside her was changing. All around them, the lost city was waking up. Lights flickered to life on walls that had been dark for centuries. Symbols began to glow, showing scenes of war, peace, and power. Jack walked slowly through the halls, reading the past through pictures. He saw a younger Lyra, surrounded by her family, wearing a silver crown. He saw a battle, ships exploding in space, alien soldiers falling, and he saw one last command, written in the language Malo had translated: "Protect the princess until she is ready." Back at the pod, Lyra stirred, her fingers twitching. Her eyes opened, brighter than ever before, glowing gold instead of silver. She sat up, the fluid draining around her. The chamber hissed open, and Jack rushed forward. "Lyra," he whispered, unsure what to expect. She stepped out slowly, her feet touching the smooth stone floor. She was taller now, not in size, but in presence. Her voice was calm, but deeper, more certain. "I remember everything," she said. Jack blinked. "Everything?" She nodded. "My family, my people, my duty." The walls responded to her words. Metal towers rose from the floor, revealing armor, light as cloth, strong as steel. She placed the crown on her head, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. "I am Lyra of Solaria," she said. "The last of my line." Jack didn't know whether to bow or cry, but then she looked at him and smiled, not like a queen, but like a daughter. "You found me and saved me," she said. "Now I'll save them." Suddenly, alarms echoed through the ruins. The Varniks had landed, soldiers in black armor storming the outer chambers. Jack ran to the control room, saw their ships above the surface. "They're here," he said. Lyra placed her hand on the main console, and a deep rumble echoed below them. A hidden vault opened. Inside stood a massive Solarian war mech, built like a titan. Its heart glowed with the same golden light as Lyra's eyes. "This is not just a machine," she said. "It's part of me." Jack looked at the cockpit, just big enough for two. "You sure about this?" he asked. Lyra smiled. "You're my pilot. I'll be the power." They stepped into the mech, and it responded immediately. Stone broke away, revealing an ancient launch tunnel. Outside, the Varniks' forces were blasting the temple doors, breaking through. But before they could enter, the ground cracked open, and the war mech rose from below like a god from the earth. The soldiers paused, staring up at the glowing titan. Then with one command from Lyra, it moved fast, silent, deadly. Lasers shot from its arms. Shields blocked incoming blasts, and every step shook the red dust beneath them. Inside the cockpit, Jack focused on movement, flight, control. Lyra focused on energy, weapons, memory. Together, they were unstoppable. The Varniks' leader shouted commands, but his ships were falling, his soldiers retreating. He screamed into his cum, "Take the girl alive, we need her blood." But it was too late. Lyra activated the final protocol. A Solarian message sent across space. "This empire still breathes. We are not extinct." Her voice echoed through every system in the region. The message wasn't just for enemies. It was for allies, for survivors, for hope. As the last Varnik ship fled, smoke rising from its engines, the battlefield fell quiet. The mech stood tall in the red dust, glowing softly. Inside, Lyra turned to Jack. "I'm not just a princess anymore," she said. Jack smiled. "You're a warrior," she nodded. "Because you taught me to be." But as they powered down, the Mechan looked at the stars above. One thing was clear. The war was not over. It had only just begun. The dust of battle still hung in the air. The red sky over Mars slowly cleared, as if even the planet itself was breathing again. Jack stood beside the giant Solarian war mech, its body still glowing faintly. Beside him, Lyra, not the scared little girl from the crash, but the last princess of a forgotten empire, standing tall, her eyes bright with golden light. She looked over the battlefield in silence. Broken Varnik ships lay scattered across the land, her enemies defeated. For now, but her heart was not celebrating. She whispered, "Too many run, too many still watch." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we watch back." Inside the temple, Solarian tech continued to awaken. More systems came online. Old messages began playing. Jack watched holograms of Lyra's parents, a king and queen, standing proud. The queen smiled at the camera, her voice calm and loving. "If you find this message, then our daughter still lives," she said, "to the one who shelters her." "Thank you." Jack's hands trembled, his chest heavy. He had never wanted to be a hero, or a father again, but fate had made the choice for him. And now, looking at Lyra, strong, kind, alive, he felt something deep, something warm. He hadn't saved her, not really. They had saved each other. Lyra turned to him, wearing her crown and armor, but her voice was soft. "You gave me a name." A home and love, Jack laughed gently. And you gave me back my heart, she tilted her head. Do I have to be queen now? Jack shrugged. Only if you want to. Maybe you can just be Lyra, she smiled. Then, I choose to lead. Suddenly, a signal came through the ancient cum tower. A fleet, not Varnics, but friendly ships. Answering the message Lyra had sent, old Solarian allies, smugglers, rebels, even humans from deep colonies, they had heard. The princess was alive. They were coming, not to take her away, but to stand with her. Jack stepped outside, staring up at the approaching lights in the sky. He whispered, "Guess this isn't a junkyard anymore." Lyra stood beside him, her cape fluttering in the wind. "This is the start of something new," she said. "A home for more than just us." And so it began, not a fairy tale, not a legend, but a new beginning, built on trust, love, and the bond between a lost alien girl and the human who gave her shelter. Lyra was no longer just a child of the stars. She was the voice of the future, the light in the dark, and Jack, the simple man who once fixed broken machines, had become the father of a galaxy's last hope. Together, they stood on Mars. A princess and her father, a warrior and her guide, not perfect, not safe, not finished, but ready, because sometimes the strongest empires rise not from blood, but from choice, and Lyra had chosen love.